Hey, folks, today's Thursday, April 25th, 2024. Coming up on Roland Martin Unfiltered, streaming live on the Black Star Network. I am here in Dallas, Fort Worth, Texas, where Tarrant County prosecutors, in a shameful, despicable display of, frankly, domestic terrorism, plan to file an appeal in the case of a black woman who for 8 years has been battling them for improperly voting. We will tell you the latest in the saga of Crystal Mason. Also, Louisiana legislature, they will redraw the boundaries of their 7-member Supreme Court to create a second black district. We'll talk with State Representative Cleo Fields State Senator Cleo Fields about this decision. Also, the Supreme Court heard oral arguments in the case of complete immunity for Donald Trump. Looks like his Supreme Court justices really asked some of the dumbest questions you've ever heard in your life, including that idiot Clarence Thomas. We'll have some of that for you. Massive protests happening on college campuses all across the country, tied to what's happening in Gaza between Israel and the Palestinians. We will talk to Tiffany Loftin, who is a longtime student organizer, about these protests. Also, in our own voice, the National Black Women's Reproductive Justice Agenda released new polling data on black voters' motivations. We'll talk about that as well. Folks, lots to discuss. It's time to bring the funk on Roland Martin Unfiltered on the Black Star Network. Let's go.
He's got whatever the miss, he's on it. Whatever it is, he's got the scoop, the fact, the find. And when it breaks, he's right on time and it's rolling. Best believe he's knowing. Putting it down from sports to news to politics. With entertainment just for kicks, he's rolling. It's on go, roll, roll, y'all. It's Roland Martin, yeah. Rolling with Roland now. He's funky, he's fresh, he's real, the best, you know he's Roland Martin now. Martin.
On April 11th, 1968, President Lyndon Baines Johnson signed into law the Fair Housing Act, also known as the 1968 Civil Rights Act. That law was signed 7 days after the assassination of the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. That bill had been filibustered for more than 2 years, and it was the death of Dr. King when LBJ sent a letter to the House the next day saying, let's honor his life by passing the bill that he gave his life for. That indeed happened. In these 56 years, we have seen significant changes when it comes to housing discrimination. But the reality is redlining, the effects of redlining, and systemic racism in the housing industry, in the loan market, continues to show segregated housing in the United States. Joining us right now is Congresswoman Maxine Waters of California. Congresswoman, always glad to have you on the show. It's interesting when we talk about what this law was supposed to do, what this law was all about, and the reality is you would think that 56 years later we would not have these problems, but housing is tied to income. Income is tied look like we have some issues with Congresswoman Maxine Waters, so we can get it back on. Income is tied to race. And we talk a lot about housing on this show because that is the quickest way for Americans to be able to build and create wealth. It's the passing down of homes. I'm broadcasting from Dallas-Fort Worth. I own this home, purchased in 1999. This home here I bought for $122,000. It's now worth 3 times that. But the reality is black folks have been frozen out of the market. There's not been a single time since the Fair Housing Act was passed and signed into law in 1968 that black home ownership has gotten above 50%. Looks like we have Congresswoman Maxine Waters back. Congresswoman, always glad to have you on the show. It's supposed to be fair housing. Unfortunately, we still have unfair housing in America because segregation persists.
Absolutely. It is historic. It has gone on for as long as we've been here. And I want you to know, even though we have fair housing that was passed to law 56 years ago, we're still facing racism and discrimination, people being denied housing units that have children. Some landlords don't like the way you look. And of course, the cost of housing has escalated so high until it is very difficult for many people who are working every day to be able to afford a decent and secure unit to live in with their children. And so you're absolutely right about the pay that still we are not able to achieve because of racism and discrimination, and because the amount of money that we earn is not keeping up with the market rates of all of this expensive housing. We have too many people who are on the street sleeping on the ground every night. Here in LA County, we're talking about 70,000 people sleeping outdoors every night. In this country, we're talking about 656,000 who are on the streets every night, not only in our major cities, but all over in our small towns, in rural areas. Housing is a problem. Racism is still a problem. The inability for people working every day again to have decent housing for their families is a real problem in this country. We're going to keep working hard. We're going to tell people that they cannot allow it to happen without complaining, about filing complaints, without talking about it, without making an issue. And that's what I and my committee are attempting to do as we have people recognize that this is Fair Housing Month.
And the thing that, and again, so much attention obviously is placed on the 1968 Fair Housing Act. But that is actually not the real culprit. This year marks the 90th anniversary of the Federal Housing Administration. And it was the Federal Housing Administration under the guise of the federal government that frankly mandated racism. But people don't realize that particular creation of the FHA, they refused to insure mortgages to African-American neighborhoods, redlining. Also, the FHA subsidized the building of homes in white neighborhoods. And so what you have here is in the book, The Color of Law, it talks about that, but it was the federal government. Black people were paying taxes, and our own government said, we're going to build affordable housing for white people in America, and we're going to completely ignore black people. And 90 years later, we are still impacted by that racist decision.
Oh, absolutely. And now, as we look at what is going on with homelessness, we have city councils who are afraid of the homeowner associations. We have zoning laws that exclude the building of affordable housing, and we don't have yet the courage that is needed to fight against those communities that are absolutely organized through these homeowner associations to keep people of color out of those neighborhoods. And so when we talk about the need to get people off the street, to have affordable housing, secure housing, we've got to start to look at our local levels who have land use authority. They're the ones who can make decisions about how that land is used and developed. And what we find is that, again, not enough courage at the local level to deal with that issue, nor do we have one-stop shops that deals with permitting and licensing for even those developers who want to build affordable housing. And we have some cities who charge the would-be developers so much money to change the wiring poles, to change the fire hydrants, to do all of this work that the city should be paying for. What we do is we drive up the cost in ways that we cannot build affordable housing. And we have a crisis We have a crisis. We don't have enough affordable housing. And even so, we don't have access to it because our city councils, for the most part, who have all this land use authority, are not using their power and their influence. And so we're fighting. We're struggling. You mentioned redlining. We've been fighting redlining for years, for many years, ever since I first started in office in California. And now we have gone through a period of time when we had these poor products, these bad products that were fostered upon us, where we got involved in mortgages that we didn't know were going to increase over the years. We were solicited and helped and assisted in getting into the home with maybe low down payments, no down payments. But what we didn't know was we had a mortgage where the interest rates was going to increase to the point where we wouldn't be able to afford it. And then the foreclosures took place.
Last question for you, and that is this here.
Yeah.
Again, when they created the Federal Housing Administration, it was to confront the lack of housing stock in this country. What we know right now, that is still the case. We know we know right now that we have under frankly first of all, we are under the number of homes created in the last decade and this decade. So what can the federal government do to actually increase housing stock in this country that will significantly help the demand? And what can be done to stop private equity from buying up all these homes? I have gotten calls, text messages, emails, notes in the mail for now 5 or 6 years trying to buy this house because private equity is going to own 40% of all homes by 2030.
Well, a lot can be done. First of all, I have legislation, and our legislation says everyone who's eligible should get Section 8, should get vouchers. And right now we have people standing in line who have been waiting for years, and we have some who have gotten the vouchers and landlords who will not accept them and who will not take them. We're working on all of this. We're also working on trying to help some of our younger people get into housing by assisting with the down payments. We're doing everything that we can to watch the government so that we don't get into the kind of bad products that they fostered upon us that caused us to have so many foreclosures. We have bills that we are putting in, but we need a Congress that will support these bills. I want to tell you, Donald Trump, the MAGA Republicans, these crazies will not support affordable housing. They don't give a darn about the people who are working every day, who can't afford a decent place to live. They care about tax cuts to the richest people and corporations in America. And you're right about private equity. And I am organizing a meeting with those in private equity, particularly the minorities who are now in private equity, to say, don't act the way some of them have acted, in the way that they have not only bought up homes, but they have taken over fire departments and hospitals and all of that, reduced the personnel, squeezed more money out of the business, et cetera, et cetera. We need to get a handle on private equity, and that's what we're trying to do in the work of the Financial Services Committee. But we need a Congress that we can get past the House of Representatives, where you got Marjorie Taylor Greene and all of those MAGA Republicans who would do anything to stop the advancement and success of Black people.
Congresswoman Maxine Waters, we appreciate it. And look, this is something that I've covered my entire career, and I don't think people realize how dire the situation is now. And it is a major problem in this country.
Absolutely.
We appreciate it. Thanks a lot.
Thank you so much for being our
Folks,
talking.
gotta go to the break. We come back.
Thank you.
I appreciate it. We're gonna keep the fight. We appreciate it, Congresswoman.
And thank you for helping to expose what is wrong with government and with those who are not acting on behalf of the people. Thank you.
All right, thanks a lot. Got to go to a break. We come back. We're going to talk to State Senator Cleo Fields. Again, folks, what's happening in Louisiana, the power of Black folks the creation of a second Supreme Court seat. But black people, you still got to vote your power. I know he got something to say about that. You're watching Roland Martin Unfiltered on the Black Star Network.
Fanbase is pioneering a new era of social media for the creator economy. This next generation social media app with over 600,000 users is raising $17 million, and now is your chance to invest. For details on how to invest, visit startengine.com/fanbase or scan the QR code. Another way we're giving you the freedom to be you without limits.
I'm Faraji Muhammad, live from LA. And this is The Culture. The Culture is a two-way conversation. You and me. We talk about the stories, politics, the good, the bad, and the downright ugly. So join our community every day at 3 p.m. Eastern and let your voice be heard. Hey, we're all in this together. So let's talk about it and see what kind of trouble we can get into. It's The Culture. Weekdays at 3, only on the Black Star Network.
I am Tommy Davidson. I play Oscar on Proud Family, Louder and Prouder.
Right now, I'm rolling with Roland Martin, unfiltered, uncut, unplugged, and undamn believable. You hear me?
I've told you numerous times on this show how important the Supreme Court is, not just on the federal level, but also among the state level. Well, for the first time in nearly 30 years, the lines are being redrawn in Louisiana. There's 7-member state Supreme Court. They're going to be creating a second majority black district. It was approved, the maps were approved on Wednesday by the House. The Senate passed it in March. And again, what they're doing is they're eliminating the Shreveport-based seat held by a white justice, Scott Crichton, who, due to term limits, will retire this fall. The new black seat will be centered in Baton Rouge. Louisiana State Senator Cleo Fields joins us from Baton Rouge. Senator Fields, glad to have you here. Look, you've been in this political game for quite some time. You were in the legislature before. You went to Congress. Now back there in the legislature. And what we are seeing now with the Supreme Court position, we saw what took place with the lawsuits creating the second congressional district. Finally, we are seeing black people get political justice in Louisiana.
No question about it, Roland. And first of all, good to be with you, good to be on your show. This has been a fight that started a long time ago, actually back in 97 when the Chisholm case came before the court. That's how we got our first Supreme Court justice. And then we fought and fought and fought, and they just failed to redistrict the lines. The lines have not been redistricted in 30-some years. And so now at the end of the day, we passed the bill. The bill got its final approval on yesterday in the House of Representatives. And hopefully the courts will not interfere with that. And we have our second Supreme Court justice in the state of Louisiana.
But explain to people who don't understand how critical this is when you talk about the highest court in the state of Louisiana.
Oh, it's very important. I mean, to have a Supreme Court justice in the state is big, but to have two is real big. Louisiana has a sizable African-American population. It has deserved a second minority seat on the Supreme Court for years. It is so important when you adjudicate, and I'm a lawyer, so when you adjudicate, the final decision could very well be the Supreme Court. There is no appeal from the Supreme Court. So it's so important that every person is represented in this state when it comes to the judiciary. And Louisiana is now stepping in line with other states in the country. The reason why this is so important is because there used to be a time before we could pass any plan in our state, you had to pass it by the Justice Department. It was something called subsection 5 of the Voting Rights Act. That's been now gutted. So Louisiana, is really dependent upon state legislatures, the state legislature, to look out for its interests. So yesterday was a monumental move in the state of Louisiana. And listen, we got to keep this ball rolling. And that's one of the reasons why, I heard and saw Maxine Waters, Congresswoman, on your show. That's why she fights so hard to pass the John Lewis Voting Rights Act. We have to pass it, and it's so important because, things like what has been happening in Louisiana and Alabama and other states across the southern part of our country would at least have a watchdog in place where we won't have to be fighting these court battles time and time again.
I'm going to go in the second hour panel with some questions, but I got to ask you this here. What in the hell needs to get done to energize black voters in this state? I'm seeing what's happening right now with MAGA Governor Jeff Landry running roughshod over the laws. Republicans now have a supermajority. In this last election, I mean, the numbers were horrible. So here you get a second majority black Supreme Court seat. You get a congressional seat. But black turnout has got to be a hell of a lot higher to maximize the black voting power in the state. The numbers are there. We're just not using it.
Numbers have always been there in Louisiana and in Mississippi and other states across the southern part. I still say we're undercounted. But it's incumbent upon us to get out and actually vote. I mean, we can have the numbers, but if we don't use them, that's a whole nother story. This past gubernatorial election, when we had Sean Wilson, I supported Sean, but the voters were just not energized. It's time for us to get voters energized, and they have to know that their vote can and will make a difference. If you recall in Shreveport, that was a race that was won, a sheriff's race that was won by one vote, and they challenged it, and then he had to have 3 elections, and people showed up, and then we got the vote out for real, and he won by over 3,000 votes. But it had to get to that point for people to realize the importance of voting. Voting is not something you should do. Voting is something that you must do. People have to get out, and they have to exercise that right to vote, and they have to do it often.
I mean, look, I'm still registered here in Texas. This is my homestead, and I came home to celebrate my dad's 77th birthday today. And my mom and dad were like, all right, after we eat lunch, then we got to go vote because they had school board elections, city council elections, and that's why I'm sitting here wearing this "I voted in Dallas County" sticker. And that's also what our folks got to understand. It's not just voting in a presidential race, a U.S. Senate, a U.S. Congress, but it's all of those city council, county commissioners, school, trustees, all of those, because all of those entities are making decisions that impact our lives.
No question about it. And we got to start at the city council level, school board level, local level. And every election is important, And in Louisiana, we have it such now that, and we fought very hard for it, that you can vote early. There used to be a time you had to go down to the registered voters office to even register to vote. Now you can register to vote by mail. You can actually vote by mail, and you can vote early. So people, there's really no reasons why people should not vote. We have a 7-day early voting period. People can get out and vote early. And look, even when you vote, people will question it. That's what happened in Shreveport. And that's why we spent some time down there to get people, out of the houses and say, listen, this is an important election. You have to get out and vote because your vote counts. But in that instance, they realized just how much their vote counted because they said, man, Cleo, if I had known this, I would have voted. I didn't vote in the primary, the general election. I would have voted. I just wasn't thinking about it. Didn't think it was that important. It's always important. And but they showed up, and I'm so proud of the people of Caddo of Shreveport. They showed up, and they showed up in record numbers. And eventually the sheriff won the race. But it took that kind of tragic incident for people to get up and get out and vote and realize the importance of their vote.
Right. Lauren Victoria Burke, she's one of our panelists with Black Press USA out of Arlington. Lauren, you got a question for Senator Cleo Fields?
Senator, it's great talking to you. It's great seeing you and Maxine Waters, two people voted against the 1994 Clinton crime bill. And I have old footage of you standing in the White House driveway talking against the Clinton crime bill. Every time I see you, I think about that. Can you talk a little bit more about the voter apathy in Louisiana and why you think that is? Do you think people have just gotten to a point where they are fed up, or was that the case when you were in Congress? Or, what do you think? Obviously, the history is very tough in Louisiana for Black folks, but what is your theory on that?
Well, I remember when I was traveling the country with Reverend Jackson, and I think it was '88 when he was running for president, and we were, at this housing project, and folk were like, I'm not voting. I don't have. And we got in the van, and I said, golly, Reverend, these folk are just, so apathetic. And he said, no, they're not apathetic. They're uninspired. People are not apathetic about voting. They're uninspired about voting. And so I see a lot of that, not only in this state, but in many parts of the country. People don't feel that voting actually helped them. They say, well, how will my life change? How is my circumstance going to change? You want me to go? You want me to register? You want me to get out and vote? So we have to make that connection. We have to show them voting makes a difference, and it will make a difference in their life and in their children's lives. And just yesterday we voted on a minimum wage bill in the Louisiana Senate in the committee, and it failed. 2-4. It's if I had some more colleagues up there that perhaps think like me, we could have passed the minimum wage bill. I think it's a shame that people work hard every day, and at the end of the day, they still poor. $7.25 is not enough. But we gotta make that connection, and that's what it's going to take. All public officials and ministers and every person. Roland, you're doing a good job at it. It's going to take all the radio stations. It's going to take all of us to say, look, it's time to get serious about voting again.
Dr. Greg Carr, Department of Afro-American Studies, Howard University out of D.C. Greg?
Hey, thank you, Roland, and good to see you, Brother Fields. Good to see you.
Greg, how are you, sir?
Yeah, I remember when you were student body president at Southern, around the same time I was student body president at Tennessee State. We've been following your fight for the people for a very long time, brother. So,
Tennessee State.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Remember them back in the day battles, man. So, but I'm wondering, I was reading the letter that 5 of the 7 current Supreme Court justices sent late last year, urging the governor and the legislature to act to create this second district. I'm wondering what you think is the play behind this clearly right-wing legislature and this MAGA governor in going ahead and advancing this legislation you propose. Are they trying to get away from and out from under, as the judges say in the letter, these 2 federal lawsuits?
No question about it. Listen, this is not, they didn't wake up this morning, one morning, and say, hey, this is bad. We need to clean it up. We need to, give African Americans an opportunity to be heard in the Supreme Court. This was through litigation by the NAACP Legal Defense Fund and the Lawyers Committee on Civil Rights. They have been fighting this case for years in court, and I think the judge has made it very clear. Y'all need to probably settle this because you're going to lose it. They brought this subsection 2 claim years ago. The Legal Defense Fund, they have, spent some $10 million litigating in court, and the Attorney General for the state, basically came to the committee and said, listen, it's time to end it. We want to save it's going to cost us money. We're going to lose the case. All indications we're going to lose it, and we're going to be faced with a $10 million legal fee. The plaintiffs have agreed to not take their legal fee, not fight for their legal fee if we settle this case. So this case was not done without a long fight of lawyers from the Legal Defense Fund and the Lawyers Committee. We wouldn't be here today but for them. That they didn't just wake up this morning and say, hey, you know what? We think we're wrong and we need to settle this case. It was because of that lawsuit, and that lawsuit was coming to a head, and that's why the legislature passed it in the Senate and in the House, and that's why the governor is going to sign it. I wish I could say, I had that kind of appeal in the Louisiana legislature. But no, this was not a let's do it for Cleo. This was let's do it because the courts are going to make us do it, and we may be able to save about $10 million. The same thing with congressional redistricting. We were winning on every level. The Legal Defense Fund was winning on every level. That case was not settled, but the reason why they passed that bill was because they were losing. And the court made it very clear they needed to do.
Thank you, Senator.
That thing with the Supreme Court, they were still losing. And so, as I always say, you can't show me nothing black folk have ever gotten in America we didn't have to fight for. Let's now go to Cleo. She calls herself the Gumbo Queen, Dr. Nola Haynes, Georgetown University School of Foreign Service. What, Nola? This is Louisiana legend.
Haynes.
You think you're the Gumbo Queen? Go right ahead.
Gumbo Queen because you can't cook it. That's why.
Girl, don't get embarrassed on my YouTube now. Go on, ask your question, Nola.
Thank you, Roland, and happy birthday to your father. It's so nice to be here with you, Senator. I have 10 million questions running through my head, as you can imagine, but I will keep this short and succinct. And I also wish Justice Guidry a lot of luck. But my question is around every time I'm home, I have very similar conversations with my family members and friends about what they see that's contributing to what seems like apathy around voting. And I completely agree with you. I think it is a lack of motivation and because there's no inspiration. And there's a tranche of issues that you can kind of trace through the legacy of Katrina that's still plaguing, the state and, particular to my context in New Orleans. And those four issues are education, how a lot of the cities were testing grounds for charter schools that many were failed experiments, crime, which is a huge problem, especially in New Orleans when so much of the economy is wrapped around tourism. Gentrification, and I can tell you, driving through the 6th and 7th Ward, it does not look the same. And also kind of lack of economic opportunities. So when you have these really large issues for people, who are committed to staying in Louisiana, who don't want to leave because that's where we're from. And I struggle with it every single day. But around those four buckets, when people are feeling a lack of motivation to vote because they don't see any changes. If anything, they see not only themselves being pushed out of, traditional communities, but the legacies of our families that are also, that were already wrecked from, the hurricanes. But we see a continuation from this legacy of Hurricane Katrina. And so I'm just curious, what are your thoughts when you talk to voters around these four issues, because they are serious and people just feel like they're going to stay home because it doesn't matter if they vote or not, because nothing's going to change.
Look, you make a very good point. Education being the key equalizer in my view. It is. For the past 4 years, I chaired Senate Education up until this year. Look, education, the budget day before yesterday was cut in the House of Representatives. Early childhood education was cut. It is absolutely almost like malpractice for us to cut education in this state. You talk about getting people off of public assistance, but yet you cut education. Let me tell you why education is just so important in my mind. When I came back to the legislature, kindergarten was not even mandatory. We made it mandatory. That early education means so much, from the womb to
I wouldn't be here without it.
No question about it. And we keep cutting education, and these kids, when they get to the third grade, when they can't read and they can't, do math, then we want to put them. We want to say they're disruptive. It's because they can't compete with the kids who've been in early childhood education forever. So we got to do a better job in finding more seats in Louisiana for early childhood education. We don't call it daycare. We call it early childhood education because it's needed. And then kindergarten and then first grade. So these kids can compete when they get to the third grade with other kids. And then they won't be as they say, a menace to society. Yeah, you're so right about that. I lived those days, during Katrina. I was one of those legislators who took 3 buses. And Maxine Waters went with me, actually. And we went and we got people out of the water and brought them to dry land. And the government was saying, we can't get there. If you would watch CNN and other news outlets, you would think that you couldn't get into New Orleans. People were just trapped in. We drove right up there and picked them up and got them out there. We picked up the Xavier students. Xavier students were on the bridge. We went
My dad
to get
was
them.
there. My dad was there. He worked there.
And I don't know if he was one of the individuals who got on the bus or not, but we got to care about people. We got to care about them. Crime, I do think education, lack of education is a byproduct of crime because our kids, they weren't born thugs. They weren't born criminals. And we got to invest in them early and they'll do better. Economic development, we got to do better in creating better jobs for our citizens. We lose our kids. They graduate and they leave. You left. People are not staying in our state because of a lack of opportunity, not a lack of commitment. So we got a lot of things to do in our state. And it's good talking to you, and I hope we can get you back very soon. The Queen.
Thank you.
You can get her back, and you can definitely remind her how to fix some gumbo. All right, Senator Cleo Fields, always a pleasure to see you.
Good to see you.
She been selling wolf tickets. She keeps saying that stuff. She ain't never brought a pot by, but that's how that is. It's all good. Senator Fields, always a pleasure, my brother. Keep up the good fight. We appreciate you being on the show.
Thank you.
All right, folks, got to go to a break. We come back. We're going to talk about the protests happening on college campuses all across the country. Please support the work that we do. You can join our Bring the Funk fan club. Our goal is to get 20,000 of our fans contributing on average $50 each. That's $4.19 a month, 13 cents a day. You can join the Bring the Funk fan club. Send your check and money order, P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C., 20037-0196. Cash App, $RM Unfiltered. PayPal, R Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle, Roland at RolandSMartin.com. Roland at RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. Don't forget, download the Black Study Network app, Apple phone, Android phone, Apple TV, Android TV, Roku, Amazon Fire TV, Xbox One, Samsung Smart TV. And, of course, be sure to get a copy of my book, White Fear, How the Browning of America is Making White Folks Lose Their Minds, available at bookstores nationwide. Get your audio version on Audible. And I told y'all, just about 500 copies left of my book, the first, President Barack Obama's Road to the White House. I said, look, I'm not reprinting them. So if you want to get your copy, you better put your order in now. I posted a photo on social media the other day. I had about 100 or so copies that I had signed before I left home. And so if you want to get the first, guys, you should have the graphic. You want to get the first. What you should do is you should absolutely go to RolandSMartin.com/the first to get that. I'm going to personally autograph all of those copies. And so, yes, I was sitting here autographing 100 books before I left home this morning to come to Texas. All right, we'll be back in a moment.
Next on the Black Table with me, Greg Carr, we welcome a towering intellect, activist, master theorist, prolific author, and unstoppable firebrand for change. The one and only Dr. Errol Henderson joins us to talk about his new book, The Revolution Will Not Be Theorized, Cultural Revolution in the Black Power Era.
And this is what's going on in so much of academia and in some movement circles is an anti-Black nationalism.
It's an hour of power that you don't want to miss. That's right here on the Black Table on the Black Star Network.
Next on A Balanced Life, we're talking everything from prayer to exercise to positive affirmations and everything that's needed to keep you strong and along your way. That's on a next A Balanced Life with me, Dr. Jackie, on Black Star Network.
Bruce Smith, creator and executive producer of The Proud Family, Louder and Prouder, and you're watching Roland Martin Unfiltered.
Protests in support of Palestinians have been taking place all across different college campuses. Columbia University, they have been protests all week. Now it's spread. MIT, it's gone to Emory in Atlanta. You've got University of Texas, USC, on and on and on. And what's interesting is how these protests are being framed here in Texas. You've got the governor, frankly, saying anybody who protests, they're all criminals. But I thought this was supposed to also be the First Amendment right to speak. In Atlanta, protesters were met with force on the Emory campus. Like other students, they're calling for colleges to divest the funds from Israeli military operations. Some Jewish students on the campuses have called the protest anti-Semitic and said they're scared for their safety. Again, these protests have taken place Columbia, Harvard, University of Texas, USC, and others. Tiffany Loftin, National Labor and Education Organizer, joins us from California. Tiffany also formerly headed the U.S. Student Association, right, Tiffany?
Yes, sir.
So here's the thing. I was communicating today with someone about what we're seeing, and one of the things they said that's happening that's happening there in Columbia is that people are forgetting exactly why there are protests. And so apparently Columbia University
Fanbase is pioneering a new era of social media for the creator economy. This next generation social media app with over 600,000 users is raising $17 million, and now is your chance to invest. For details on how to invest, visit startengine.com/fanbase or scan the QR code. Another way we're giving you the freedom to be you without limits.
On the next Get Wealthy with me, Deborah Owens, America's Wealth Coach, have you ever had that $1 million idea and wondered how you could make it a reality? On the next Get Wealthy, you're going to meet Liska Askalise, the inventress, someone who made her own idea a reality and now is showing others how they can do it too.
Positive, focusing in on the thing that you want to do, writing it down, and not speaking to naysayers or anybody about your product until you've taken some steps to at least execute.
Liska Askalise on the next Get Wealthy, right here, only on Black Star Network.
I'm Faraji Muhammad, live from LA. And this is The Culture. The Culture is a two-way conversation. You and me. We talk about the stories, politics, the good, the bad, and the downright ugly. So join our community every day at 3 p.m. Eastern and let your voice be heard. Hey, we're all in this together. So let's talk about it and see what kind of trouble we can get into. It's The Culture, weekdays at 3, only on the Black Star Network.
Hey, it's John Murray, the executive producer of the new Sherry Shepherd Talk Show. You're watching Roland Martin, Unfiltered.
All right, folks, there was some interference outside with the wires here, but it's all good. All right, we're back. To Tiffany Loftin. Tiffany, this was interesting. I was told that Columbia opened a global center with a dual degree program with Tel Aviv University. 40 students are enrolled. The problem is Palestinian students can't enroll or use the program. And the students in the original letter, they were demanding that the university end this program. Also, because of Israeli policies, it restricts Palestinians students from accessing or visiting the global center. So what someone said is, it said, so Columbia essentially knowingly constructed a Jim Crow educational program. That was the reason for the original protest. What you now see this back and forth. You hear people saying, that even if you're protesting is anti-Semitic. Part of the issue you also have is on some of these campuses, you don't know who's actually a student, who are people from the outside. And so now this thing is all over the place. What are you hearing? And now you got Republicans showing up at Columbia. Now that the Proud Boy, how you got the racist Proud Boys rolling up to Columbia trying to fight anti-Semitism with their racist ass. Right. I mean, this is what you're now dealing with these protests.
That's right. Roland, I've been to Palestine 3 times. So, folks, your audience should know this. One, I've been to Palestine 3 times. And as you mentioned, I used to be the president of a national student organization called the United States Student Association, National Civil Rights Advocacy Organization, student-run, student-led. And I have taught classes at UC Santa Cruz over the last 3 or 4 years. The students who are protesting at Columbia, like you said, are protesting for access to the program. But the hypocrisy is the reason why students across the country are now booming in protest is because those same practices of segregation based off of religion or based off of identity or based off of your nationality are actually mirror to what Israel does to Palestinians already outside in the Middle East. It's what they do in Gaza. It's what they do in Israel, outside of the Middle East during the occupation. So you have students who are Palestinian who already have been displaced because they can't participate as whole citizens in Israel, come to the campus, and now they can't participate in programs, again, because of their nationality and because of their religion. 42,000 people, Roland, have been killed. 80,000 have been injured. And 442 schools in Gaza have been destroyed. So when you have the valedictorian, which is a prestigious accomplishment at the University of Southern California, who out of 400 other students got chosen to give the remarks at the graduation, be told we're not going to let you speak for safety reasons, and because there are students on campus who don't feel safe with the valedictorian speaking, because the link in your bio on Instagram told people to donate to the damages in Gaza, we really have an issue. We're talking about democracy. And for everybody listening to the sound of my voice, I want to remind us, yes, there are small cases where we have people who are not current students on the campuses and university. But a lot of the encampments that we see, and you name some of the schools, Roland, but we got Princeton, Brown, Cornell University, University of Pennsylvania, Rochester, Delaware, Tufts University, my homegirl Aja's at UC Berkeley right now, University of Michigan, North Carolina, Chapel Hill, Humboldt, Cal Poly, University of Texas at Austin, UCLA, USC, Columbia University, etc. These students that are building these encampments are doing it for one major reason. One, students are not criminals. So we are watching students live document their experiences with police officers on horses, with batons. Students at Emory University just got tased. 400 plus students across the country have now been arrested, and now they're trying to fundraise money to bail these students out. My homeboy, President Griggs of the Georgia NAACP, has demanded to meet with the president of Emory University so that he can talk about mitigating the damages and the treatment from police officers off campus and off campus who are coming on campus and treating these students like they are criminals. These students are doing peaceful protests, and they are on purpose, because the definition of protest is also to disturb the practices as usual, business as usual, is that they are on campus occupying, which we have seen before, spaces for students to say, listen, we no longer want segregation. We don't want our campuses to invest in Israel. We want to divest from weapons, arms, and sending money over to Israel. We want to free Gaza. We want to free Palestine. And I think, Roland, police officers and campuses, administrations, and especially elected officials need to take this moment more seriously and allow the students to peacefully demonstrate, to peacefully express their freedom of speech, and come to the table to have discussions about how to make these campuses more inclusive. Because what you're watching right now is dangerous and it is wrong.
I'm looking here. There was a protest at Ohio State, and they actually had snipers on the roof.
Yep. So I looked for that on the internet, Roland, because I was trying to see if that was real or not.
It is as if there's this, I mean, literally in Texas, right here in Texas, Governor Greg Abbott called in. He didn't. University of Texas is located in Austin, Texas. The Austin Police Department wasn't at the protest.
Right.
The Travis County Sheriff's Office was at the protest. The governor literally called in Department of Public Safety state troopers from several cities to come into the campus. And so these folks are literally trying to crush dissent.
That's right. We've also seen rumors, Roland, that that the federal government is thinking about calling the National Guard in to dissent to break up these students and to end the encampments. But I've also seen a video, Roland, of
so hold on one second. So the federal government can't do that. So what has to happen is a governor of a state has to request the National Guard. So a governor. So if it's in New York State, Hochul has to make that request to the federal government. In Texas, same way. And so the feds can't unilaterally send the National Guard into a state unless the governor makes the request. Go ahead.
That's really helpful for students to know right now. And I think all the information around the legalities, the fundraising, the legal processes are really important for us to share with students who, mind you, some of these students were attending campuses and university during the pandemic and have no idea what it's like to be able to organize on a university or on a campus. So all the information and all of the knowledge that we have about how to make sure they first stay safe, and two, that they're able to demonstrate and exercise their right to freedom of speech is really important. I saw a video, Roland, in Washington, D.C. of faculty from different schools coming together and literally holding arms with each other, surrounding the student encampment in order to say we are standing in solidarity with these students and we will protect these students because they have every right to be angry, they have every right to demonstrate. And the power, right, of what is happening right now with student leadership across the country doing this in unison and showing up in encampments when the government is now trying to ban TikTok, I think just demonstrates the strategic capabilities of young people across the country to organize for one cause and one movement. Now, in every state and every school has different relationships to Israel, has different rules around divestment, have different demands, but the cause in of itself is the same. And you see students rocking keffiyehs on their campuses. They are spending the night at their schools. Community members are coming in to pass out water and pizza and face masks and sleeping bags and blankets and et cetera to support these students in their cause. And it's so important that we give students a space. This is how I got into organizing, Roland. It wasn't necessarily through a protest for Palestine, but I got involved because somebody hung a noose on my campus when I was running for student body president. And if it had not been for the students at that school who stood with me in solidarity when the regents rose our tuition, if it had not been for community members who came to the campus to support students when they hung the noose at my school, when they told us that we couldn't mass mobilize and hold protests to keep ourselves safe or to demand change on campus, I would not be a national leader right now. I would not have been the national director of the NAACP. I would not have been a national organizer in labor. I would have not have been a national organizer for student loan debt cancellation. So what we're seeing right now is really empowering. And I'm rooting for the students, and we got to make sure that they're able to continue their movement and have faculty and labor unions and community members and elected officials come out and support these young people.
Questions for our panel. Let's go with the college professor, Dr. Greg Carr.
Thank you, Roland. And yeah, let me join with Nolan and please tell your father happy birthday from me. Lucky 77. That's a lucky number, brother. So, and it's good to see you, sis. Good to see you, Tiffany.
You too.
I was following along some of the stuff. I saw some of the students from the AUC who had gone over. I think at least one young brother was arrested. I saw them back over at the King Chapel. There was some video online. I'm wondering how you see this unfolding. Clearly, it's not going away. So I got a message from some colleagues at the University of Texas. They say no teaching today. They were out there, no grading, no teaching, no business as usual. Saw Ruha Benjamin at Princeton saying something along similar lines. Do you see this unfolding, perhaps not the same, but in a similar arc, given that the Democrats will be in Chicago this summer, as the anti-Vietnam War efforts in '68, which of course some people would say led to the riotous convention in Chicago in 1968 with the racist Daley, and perhaps the return of Richard Nixon. I'm just thinking about how you see it, because it's not going away. How do you see this unfolding on the landscape of national electoral politics this year?
That's a great question, Dr. Carr. Let me say a few things. One, we have been watching the genocide of Gaza for over 200 days. And in any national campaign where young people have been a part of a movement, there have been ebbs and flows. We've seen mass protests across the country in major cities, metropolitan cities, to say free Gaza. And now we have students who have just come back from spring break, who are taking over their campuses with encampments to say we also want to free Gaza. And our university has a relationship with Israel, and we want to break that relationship. The school is going to continue for the next few weeks. We just saw, like I said, USC canceled their commencement because of the unsafe fear that they might have for a Muslim valedictorian speaking. I am sure that these protests will continue for the rest of the school year. That I am confident in. What I'm also confident in is I actually just returned from Washington, D.C., Dr. Carr. And I'm sorry I didn't text you when I was there, but when I come back, I will hit you up. But I was in Washington, D.C., and there were 9 states. This is hard for listeners to understand, so hear me. Where school systems, university school systems exist, there are what we call statewide student associations. What those are student governments from all of those schools in the school system forming an organization. We had 9 of those in Washington, D.C. gather together to talk only about how do we build now a national student organization? How do we bring back a national student organization that could be a vehicle and a container for young people to organize in really big ways? And this is, I mean, I'm really upset and pissed off and sad about what's happening in Gaza. But because of this catastrophe, young people have been able to mobilize and organize themselves to create structure to continue the fight. And America ought to be trembling if young people are organizing on campuses right now, form an organization, and then use that organization to organize politically for the elections. America ought to be petrified. And so I think once this organization takes off, because of the momentum, young people are now looking for a political home to be a part of, that it matches their values. And Dr. Carr, you and I could talk about this all day, and Uncle Roland, and we've texted about this. There are a lot of organizations right now that young people feel like cannot be their political homes because they don't identify with the values of the leadership of that organization. So if they can't find it, they're going to build it. And if they build it, this year's elections are going to suffer if they do not match the needs and the demands of what students are saying right now.
Thank you, too.
Yes, sir.
Noah.
Thank you so much, sis, for doing the work that you do. And, you know, I have so many intersections where this hits home. I got my PhD at USC. I did not have a great time at USC. I got my undergrad at UCLA, and I went to Harvard, and I'm a professor at Georgetown. There's a lot of intersecting things for me that's happening, you know. And, you know, on the other side of things, I'm also a national security and foreign policy expert. And so when this whole situation first started at USC, and when I first saw it in the news, I said, oh, Lord Jesus, today, please give us strength. And when that young woman was denied being able to speak, and the messaging that went out, that USC put out, I was so upset as a security professional because I thought that it failed not only the student body, but it failed the American people by not saying, what are those security threats? Now, in my mind, the first thing that I went to was, okay, a day or two before that happened, the FBI
I need to add,
said the amount of terrorists.
No, hold on. I need to add, USC came in about an hour ago, so USC has decided there's not even going to be a commencement now.
Oh, yeah, I said that. I know. Yeah. They're canceling the entire commencement. First, they canceled the valedictorian. Then they canceled guest speakers. Now they canceled the entire graduation.
She couldn't speak.
I get all the emails still. Like, I know.
I mean, it's crazy.
And you know what I think they should do? I think they should hold their own graduation. They should hold their own graduation.
Here's the context thing that I'm really, really upset with. If there's a security concern, let us know. What is it? The students not only need to know what that is, but everybody else, if you have not met social media, need to know what that is too, because the FBI absolutely did come out and say that terrorist threats, that the rising threats are very real, and we need to take those into serious consideration. Is that what it's about? I want to know. I still have questions. What are these security concerns? So that's the first part of it. As you know, having been at USC for 6 years and having my own situations that happened to me and what's happening to students, and some of those students, and we need to keep in mind, these are babies that are still suffering from quarantine.
Yeah.
Okay. So they have still not had experiences in terms of, you know, experiencing college life or high school life. And now you're taking this away from them. That is going to leave a scar. That's one part of it. The other parts, in terms of the way that this has spread to other universities, and when I read the demands, I'm getting to my question, I promise. As a UCLA student, the UCs have a long tradition of protesting. And honey, I was one of those students protesting for any and everything when I was an undergrad. So there is precedent for universities divesting from things like apartheid. There's precedence there, right? So what the students are asking for, many of these things are not outside of the realm of reality, right? So my question is, I have a lot more to say, but I'm gonna go ahead and wrap this up. What do you think, in your professional opinion, and from all of your experiences, what can that conversation look like between the students and the administration? What do you think needs to happen for there to be some sort of diplomatic endeavors, some sort of consensus, some sort of agreement? Because to see semi-automatic weapons pointed at students on campuses that I grew up on, that I taught on, breaks my heart in so many directions I cannot even begin to express. In your professional opinion, what do you think next steps are? What needs to happen?
So that's a great question, and I won't pretend
Answer that
to
question.
know. Huh?
What did you say?
I didn't hear you, Aunt.
I said, I'm glad we finally got to that question.
Anyway, this what
we was building. We was building. This is how organized work. We was building. He said, I'm glad we got to the question. I'm glad you asked that, and I want to preface this by saying that although I graduated from the University of California, Santa Cruz, I'm not a current student, and we are constantly receiving new information for how the students want to move, and they are leading in this moment. What I would recommend, and what I also am training my students to understand, is how power works. And to answer your question, the next things that they can do, because school's almost out in a few weeks, graduation is coming up, there are things that they can do to support themselves on campus, like I said, host their own graduation. And there are things that they can do to challenge the relationships of power. And, when I was on campus and when I told you all the story about somebody hanging a noose at school, we worked with the student government to have meetings with the administrators on campus and the chancellor. And then when they didn't listen to us, we met with elected officials on the statewide level. What we're seeing is the demonstration of power in numbers. This is not just because 10 students took over the campus. We've got 50, 100, 1,000 young people on these campuses taking over and spending the night for multiple days. They are demonstrating in numbers how powerful they are. And there's currently a letter that is being drafted by students that is going to go around nationally for all students to sign on to, so we can measure not only how widely felt this is, but how deeply felt this is. And once those young people, I'm about to say once those young people are able to demonstrate the number in powers, they can go to their elected officials and demand certain changes during a presidential election. We've been demanding it on social media, but elected officials don't really listen to us on social media, right? This social media is for us. What we need to do is demonstrate our power and meet with elected officials. Now, I am very well experienced that sometimes you meet with elected officials and they don't give a damn what you have to say, and then we have to escalate our tactics. And we will continue to see that happen, even so now, while young people are getting arrested for the cause. So I think that there are multiple avenues that young people will continue to take. Resistance is one of the biggest tools that we have in our toolbox. And we're going to continue to support students as they're taking over their campuses. And whatever it is that they decide to do over the summertime, gearing up for the fall when they come back, to answer Dr. Carr's question again, which I do believe this will continue into the rest of the year, especially since elections are November 5th, we're going to see students build on a strategy that we have not seen before.
Thank you.
Lauren?
So, Tiffany, they're building on a strategy. Hey, Tiffany, how you doing? How are you?
Good to see you.
Great seeing you. They're building on a strategy towards what issue, I wonder. Earlier this week, I was at Columbia University, and I guess I'm a bit of an isolationist. We have the 70th anniversary of Brown v. Board coming up, and I think about Ruby Bridges and the Little Rock Nine and James Meredith, and I don't really, I look at things through the lens of how is this going to affect African-American students in the United States? That's just what I think about. And, I'm not seeing where this would matter for that particular cohort. Obviously, as you know, Tiffany, Congress just allocated another $60 billion to Israel. I'm sorry, $60 billion to Ukraine, and 24 to Israel, and $8 billion to Taiwan. In a world where people are sleeping on the streets in the United States, and obviously, Biden has done good with student loan forgiveness, I believe. But I just wonder, where in this story should this matter for HBCUs, for African-American students, for the things that are seen through that lens? It's not that I don't care about what's going on in the Middle East, but I'm curious about that, and I'm always focused on that no matter what's going on. So I just wonder what your thoughts are on that.
That's a fantastic question, and this would not be the Roland Martin Digital Show if we didn't ask that question. So thank you, Lauren. Two things. One, we talked about on this platform the public safety training facility in Atlanta, Georgia, that is being built, that protesters have been escalating tactics around to stop from building and to reframe those funds for other purposes in the state of Georgia and in the city of Atlanta. We have watched young people during the Black Lives Matter movement take over their campuses and form Black Lives Matter chapters and protest against the police, against police brutality, to stand in solidarity with families who have lost loved ones to police officers. We've talked about all of that here on this show, and there are direct connections, financial connections, political connections, electoral connections to how Israel trains police officers in the United States and how those United States police officers who were trained in Israel attack and target Black students on campus. So there's a direct correlation, which is why you see so many Black people who understand that connection and who have been to Palestine or have joined Blacks for Palestine, the organization, or stand in solidarity with Blacks and Muslim people, because we know Black folks are Muslim as well. You've seen so much language and conversation about those communities coming together. That's one reason why. It's because state violence is inspired by Israel. And America continues to fund Israel and store our weapons. There's a whole warehouse in Israel with bullets and missiles and weapons that the United States has just in case they need it for us. And we know that they didn't use them during the insurrection. But if Black people were to take over this country and have a protest for whatever it is that we wanted to fight for, we're going to see the exact same attacks on Black folks that we have seen on students right now and on Palestinians in Israel. So there's a direct connection here when we talk about state violence and police officers. But to answer your question as well, we know that the budget does not work as easily as I hope it would. I hope that we can just say, Joe Biden, don't spend billions of dollars on foreign aid, cancel all the student loan debt. But the budget doesn't work like that. And so what we're saying is young people right now on campus don't at all qualify for Joe Biden's plan on student loan debt forgiveness because their loans were not discharged in 2021, I believe. 2021. I might fact check that. I think it was 2021, 2022. I believe it was 2021. If their loans were not discharged by June of 2021, then they don't qualify for this program. There are other programs that they can apply to, and we hope and pray that that works out. But in terms of his student loan debt cancellation process that he's been doing, the rounds that he's been making, it's for people who have already graduated and already have the debt. But young people are like, well, wait a minute. If you can give billions and billions of dollars to Israel to continue the occupation, then why can't you make education free? Then why can't you cancel student loan debt? Then why can't you pay teachers a fair wage? Then why can't you support DEI programs? Why do we have to fire 61 faculty members in Texas because y'all wanted to ban DEI? Why can't we support undocumented students with financial aid? Why can't we increase the Pell Grant? There's a direct correlation here, and all of those issues impact the Black community. They all impact young Black people who want to go to school. They all impact Black people who want to graduate when they go to college. And so these issues are intersected, and there's no way to separate them, especially as we think about Black people who are incarcerated in the United States and the connection that that means from the inspiration they get from Israel.
All right, then. Well, Tiffany, we'll appreciate it. We'll see exactly if we're going to see more protest grow across the country. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, sir. Love y'all.
All right, then, folks. Crazy day. Supreme Court listened to oral arguments regarding the absolute immunity argument of Donald Trump and his lawyers. Some of the questions from these conservative justices were insane. Then, of course, you've got David Pecker testifying about all the legal crap they did, blocking stories, paying off people to help Donald Trump win in 2016. And people are actually still supporting this shameful, despicable, evil man. We'll break it all down. You're watching Roland Martin Unfiltered on the Black Star Network. A lot of of y'all have been asking me about the pocket squares that we have available on our website. You see me rocking the Shibori pocket square right here. It's all about looking different. And look, summertime is coming up. Y'all know, I keep trying to tell fellas, change your look, please. You can't wear athletic shoes every damn wear. So if you're putting on linen suits, if you're putting on some summer suits, have a whole different look. The reason I like this particular pocket square, the Shibori, because it's sort of like a flower and looks pretty cool here versus the traditional boring silk pocket squares. But also I like being a little different as well. So this is why we have these custom-made feather pocket squares on the website as well. My sister actually designed these after a few years ago. I was in this battle with Steve Harvey at Essence, and I saw this at a St. Jude fundraiser. I saw this feather pocket square, and I said, well, I got some ideas. So I hit her, and she sent me about 30 different ones. And so this completely changes your look. Now, some of you men out there, I had some dudes say, oh, man, I can't wear that. Well, if you ain't got swagger, that's not my problem. But if you're looking for something different to spruce up your look, fellas, ladies, if y'all looking to get your man a good gift, I've run into brothers all across the country with the feather pocket squares saying, see, check mine out. So it's always good to see them. And so this is what you do. Go to RolandSmartin.com/pocket squares. You can order Shibori pocket squares or the custom-made pocket squares. Now, for the Shiboris, we're out of a lot of the different colors, and I think we're down to about 200 or 300. So you want to get your order in as soon as you can, because here's what happened. I got these several years ago, and the Japanese company signed a deal with another company, and I bought them before they signed that deal, and so I can't get access to any more from the company in Japan that makes them. And so get yours now. So come summertime, when I see y'all at Essence, y'all could be looking fly with the Shibori pocket square or the custom-made pocket square. Again, RolandSmartin.com/pocket squares. Go there now.
Me, Sherry Shepard, and you know what you're watching, Roland Martin Unfiltered.
We truly do have, frankly, a corrupt Supreme Court. Today, oral arguments were heard regarding Trump's claim of complete immunity. And I swear, the questions from these conservative judges, Clarence Thomas, Sam Alito, Neil Gorsuch, Brett Kavanaugh, even Justice John Roberts, you're shaking your head going, are y'all serious? Are you literally serious? This idiot Clarence Thomas came out of the gate. First of all, why is he even hearing the case, considering he's married to somebody who's an insurrectionist? Y'all, Lord have mercy. Okay, all right. Check this out, okay? We're going to first play you a soundbite. This is Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson, one of the sane folks.
That's more worried about. You seem to be worried about the president being chilled. I think that we would have a really significant opposite problem if the president wasn't chilled. If someone with those kinds of powers, the most powerful person in the world, with the greatest amount of authority, could go into office knowing that there would be no potential penalty for committing crimes. I'm trying to understand what the disincentive is from turning the Oval Office into, the seat of criminal activity in this country.
I don't think there's any allegation of that in this case. And what George Washington said is, what Benjamin Franklin said is, we view the prosecution of a chief executive as something that everybody cried out against as unconstitutional. And what George Washington said is, we're worried about factional strife, which will.
No, I'm also. Let me put this worry on the table. If the potential for criminal liability is taken off the table, wouldn't there be a significant risk that future presidents would be emboldened to commit crimes with abandon while they're in office? It's right now the fact that we're having this debate because OLC has said that presidents might be prosecuted. Presidents from the beginning of time have understood that that's a possibility. That might be what has kept this office from turning into the kind of crime center that I'm envisioning. But once we say no criminal liability, Mr. President, you can do whatever you want, I'm worried that we would have a worse problem than the problem of the president feeling constrained to follow the law while he's in office.
I respectfully disagree with that because the regime you've described is the regime we've operated under for 234 years. There has.
All right, folks, here is Supreme Court Justice Sonia Sotomayor.
Malum in se is a concept long viewed as appropriate in law, that there's some things that are so fundamentally evil that they have to be protected against. Now, I think, and your answer below, I'm going to give you a chance to say if you stay by it. If the president decides that his rival is a corrupt person and he orders the military or orders someone to assassinate him, is that within his official acts that for which he can get immunity?
It would depend on the hypothetical, but we can see that could well be an official act.
It could, and why? Because he's doing it for personal reasons. He's not doing it like President Obama is alleged to have done it, to protect the country from a terrorist. He's doing it for personal gain. And isn't that the nature of the allegations here? That he's not doing these acts in furtherance of an official responsibility. He's doing it for personal gain.
I agree with that characterization of the indictment, and that confirms immunity, because the characterization is that there's a series of official acts that were done for an unlawful.
No, because immunity says even if you did it for personal gain, we won't hold you responsible. How could that be?
Now you go from that brilliance to this, let's just say crap, from Justice Sam Alito.
I'm sure you would agree with me that a stable democratic society requires that a candidate who loses an election, even a close one, even a hotly contested one, leave office peacefully if that candidate is the incumbent.
Of course.
All right. Now, if an incumbent who loses a very close, hotly contested election knows that a real possibility after leaving office is not that the president is going to be able to go off into a peaceful retirement, but that the president may be criminally prosecuted by a bitter political opponent, will that not lead us into a cycle that destabilizes the functioning of our country as a democracy? And we can look around the world and find countries where we have seen this process, where the loser gets thrown in jail.
So I think it's exactly the opposite, Justice Alito. There are lawful mechanisms to contest the results in an election, and outside the record, but I think of public knowledge, petitioner and his allies filed dozens of electoral challenges, and my understanding is lost all but one that was not outcome determinative in any respect. There were judges that said in order to sustain substantial claims of fraud that would overturn an election result that's certified by a state, you need evidence, you need proof. And none of those things were manifested. So there is an appropriate way to challenge things through the courts with evidence. If you lose, you accept the results. That has been the nation's experience. I think the court is well familiar with that.
Mr. Sauer and others have identified events in the past, conduct that might have been charged as a federal crime, and you say, well, no, that's not really true. This is page 42 of your brief. So what about President Franklin D. Roosevelt's decision to intern Japanese Americans during World War II? Couldn't that have been charged under 18 U.S.C. 241, conspiracy against civil rights?
Today, yes, given this court's decision in Trump versus United States, in which Trump versus Hawaii, where the court said Korematsu is overruled. I mean, President Roosevelt made that decision with the advice of his attorney general. That's a layer of safeguard.
Is that really true? I thought Attorney General Bettel thought that there was really no threat of sabotage, as did J. Edgar Hoover.
So I think that there is a lot of historical controversy, but it underscores that occurred during wartime. It implicates potential commander-in-chief concerns about the exigencies of national defense that might provide an as-applied Article II challenge at the time. I'm not suggesting today, but the idea that a decision that was made and ultimately endorsed by this court, perhaps wrongly, in the Korematsu case, would support criminal prosecution under 241, which requires under United States versus Lanier that the right have been made specific so that there is notice to the president. I don't think that would have been satisfied.
All right.
Lauren, is it me or the conservative justices nuts?
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, what we're listening to is an argument about whether or not Donald Trump can do whatever he wants, whenever he wants, to whomever he wants, right? That's what Sam Alito wants to check for everybody. Whether or not Donald Trump can just do anything, anytime, anyplace, whether it's assassinate other people, whether it's, call for an attack on the U.S. Capitol, whatever. We just want to know that. I mean, that is the backdrop of what we're talking about. A U.S. president that incited an attack on the United States Capitol. It's incited an attack on the legislative branch to block the certification of his opponent who beat him by 8 million votes. And these guys are up here talking about this like it's past assault. That's the line that they've moved us to, that this is normal conversation. And Sam Alito is an absolute trip. But, it's all for Donald Trump. It's all for the tiki god of Donald Trump. It's all to please Donald Trump, and it's the audience of one theory once again. Sam Alito wants to make sure, and Clarence Thomas wants to make sure that Donald Trump can hear what they're saying and make sure that everybody knows in Trump world and MAGA world that we're standing up for Trump. So this is going to be an interesting decision, because I actually think they may go in Trump's favor.
I mean, you're sitting here and you're listening to a Trump lawyer, Nola, say, hey, he can actually have Navy SEAL Team 6 kill a political rival.
Right.
Sure. Not a problem.
Right.
I mean, this is insane. This is crazy.
Right.
You saying so much, I can't. Did you say my name? Okay. Anyhow.
Nola?
Yes, you did. You know what? This is for many years, I TA'd and co-taught law policy a law and policy class at USC, as we're talking about young folks. And one of the things that students will constantly say over and over, how can any fair adjudication ever happen when the starting point is, oh, this is a liberal judge and oh, this is a conservative judge? So the starting point, let's start there with the problem of you can talk about this in terms of being a constitutionalist or a traditionalist, but at the end of the day, you're going to find something that fits your ideology that already exists. And there are particular judges on the Supreme Court that were handpicked by Donald Trump just for this reason. And it was not kept a secret. It was in plain view, in plain sight. Trying to pregame it for a situation just like this. So the conversation, while it is around this particular situation, is a lot larger than this. We need to completely rethink our Supreme Court system. It should not be along the lines of political ideology. I think that is a mistake. It is a mistake, and it will continue to drag us down into the same voids, the same black holes that we are in right now. Because basically, it's a situation of who can craft the best argument that fits an ideology, and that is not okay. And I'm not saying that I tend to have more empathy and sympathy for the liberal judges, because I feel like they have to do a lot of, acrobatics to speak in a way that makes sense versus the ideology. But if we need, talk about correcting the entire system, it needs to happen on both sides. The way that our system currently exists, it is not working and it is not helpful. Now, in terms of where they will land with this, they're going to kick it back to the lower courts. Because they understand, beyond Donald Trump, even though I believe if he gets in, you're going to have to drag him out by his toes in that hairpiece that was flying around in the wind today, because he's not going to come out. And the next person who gets in, that will be a Democrat, then that same standard has to apply. And that will be the only thing that will keep them from going full Trump. And, I think that they will kick it back down to the lower court. But this is a huge problem in our country that needs to be fixed.
Greg, these justices, they literally, this is how deranged MAGA is. They want to allow this man to do whatever he wants, when he wants. And this is all a move to further delay the trial. It's sickening, but it is who they are. And the fact that Clarence Thomas is actually allowed to sit on the bench knowing exactly what his wife was involved in, that I keep telling people, you can sit here and talk about, I'm not going to vote. Let me be very clear to all of y'all people who are thinking that right now. Clarence Thomas is 75. Sam Alito is 74. If Donald Trump is elected in November, those two are going to immediately retire so Donald Trump can replace them on the bench. And Sonia Sotomayor is 69. He may actually, again, if he wins, he may actually replace 3. That means he would have picked 6 out of the 9 Supreme Court justices. But folks go ahead and decide they want to sit their ass at home. Greg, go ahead.
That's right, Roland. And that's what this is about. I agree with you, Prof. I agree with you, Nola. They're going to try to kick this back down, more than likely. And that will leave it in the hands of Judge Chuckton to try to parse when a public act or a private act might fall outside the scope of presidential immunity. And you're absolutely right, Roland. This is really what this is about. This is about getting their master, as you say, their tiki god, Lauren, past November. This is what this is about. And so, John Henry Clark used to say, in some stories, there are no good guys. So when you bring up the specter of Korematsu, it's a tragic moment in U.S. history. When you say something like Clarence Thomas, who was a complete embarrassment to the bench, to his race, and to basically to anything associated with any common human decency. Clarence Thomas brought up the Bay of Pigs today and said there were no prosecutions after the Bay of Pigs. And the lawyer had to remind him, well, there's a doctrine called a public authority defense. So when you see a president who acts in a way that you might not agree with, he's protected from prosecution for overseas acts, and that was kind of like in the same vein, a similar vein as you heard the reply to the Korematsu case. But as a black person, I can sympathize with the idea of illegal actions or immoral actions. And you heard Sonia Sotomayor refer to a Latin phrase, malum esse. Malum in se in the law means it is evil in itself. It's a moral wrong, regardless of whether it's illegal or not, or whether it's legal by a legal standard. It is wrong in itself. Well, that's what we're facing here. If we get to that issue, but I agree, we're not going to get to that issue because their number one goal, the Christian soldier, Sam Alito, who is a hard right-wing ideologue, but also a political animal, Clarence Thomas, who is a black man, who knows how much time he's got. His hair turns snow white. We know that diabetes and heart disease is real in black communities. And with the stress he's under as a whole manservant of white supremacy for decades, God only knows how much time any of us have on the earth. But I wouldn't bet against Clarence Thomas and Sam Alito, as you say, tendering their resignations at some point under a Trump presidency. And finally, I'll end with this. If they can get him past the election, then we all know what happens to this case. He will direct the Department of Justice to dismiss it. But that's exactly what they're trying to do. They're trying to string this clock out.
Mm-hmm. And that is the case. All right, folks, I got to go to a quick break. We come back. Another poll that focuses on African Americans that mainstream media probably is going to ignore, but we won't. We'll talk about that next on Roland Martin Unfiltered on the Black Star Network.
Now streaming on the Black Star Network.
I was just in my backyard. I was manifesting about life. I said, I would love to come back because it was a great time, and these kids need that right now. They need that male role model in the schools, I think. Even on TV. Yeah. Because people are scared to go into the high schools. The high school, you know what I mean? I would love to bring it back, and I think we can bring it back. What do you think? I think we'll ask the people. I want to ask your people.
We'll do a poll. Y'all want to hang him, Mr. Cooper?
Yeah, I say let's go. We all look good. Holly looked good. Raven looked the same. Marquise, Don Lewis. It'd be funny to have the bullshit you see out there on TV now. God damn. What the fuck? What happened to TV? Damn.
It's some...
I'm like, oh my God.
Sherry Shepard with Sammy Roman.
I'm Dr. Robin B., pharmacist and fitness coach, and you're watching Roland Martin Unfiltered.
All right, folks, a recent poll conducted by In Our Own Voice, a national black women's reproductive justice agenda. They did it in partnership with the nonpartisan public opinion research firm Perry Undum. It found that economic security and opportunity rank as the highest priority for most young black voters. Joining us right now is President and CEO Dr. Regina Davis Moss to talk about this poll. Dr. Moss, glad to have you here. First off, okay, how many people were polled? Were they all black?
Yes. Thank you for lifting that up. We are centering black people in these polls.
And the polling sample, was it 800 to 1,000?
So what we do is, all in, it was 4,500 black people. For our national poll, we polled 1,000 black men and women, and then we went into 9 states and polled 500 women in each state for a total of 4,500. And this is because since 2012, we've been doing this work because, number one, we've been tired of people speaking for us, always having to be on the defensive, and quite frankly, just not getting it right. When we're just only like small samples in these larger polls, and they're always misreading and misrepresenting us. And so we set us out to do that, just that.
Well, that was one of the points that I made last week about when Stephen A. Smith went on Sean Hannity's show and they were talking about, polling. I'm like, dude, y'all are speaking to a small sample of black people in that New York Times Siena poll. With you on, this is the 4th black poll. Black PAC, Higher Heights, Black Women's Roundtable, this one. So the past 2 months, there have been 4 black-specific polls, so it'd be nice at least if the black journalists on mainstream would at least cite the black polls when they're discussing polling numbers. Now, what did y'all polls show in terms of the top priorities for African Americans?
So one thing I want to say is that in our poll in particular, we were centering reproductive justice. And for those who do not know, reproductive justice is the right to decide if, when, and how to have a child. But also, when you decide to have that child, you can raise that child in a safe and sustainable environment. So that's things like Trayvon Martin. You know, when we want to make sure that kids are not exposed to excessive police force and all the other things once we have those children. And so in our polls, we found, similar to the other ones, that young people are not as motivated, that the voting issues that are top of mind, as you have already said, are cost of living, but racial justice. So things like free and fair elections, democracy, those are really key. We are very interested. One of the things that came out is that the influence of states, our motivations for voting. Black communities are, supportive of abortion rights and access and comprehensive sex ed. But I don't want people to get mistaken by this. This is not, it's an important issue for us, but it's not a top tier issue for us. And then we start getting into things of like, what is the impact on Black women after Dobbs? And one of the things that came out is that it's really impacted Black women in a very personal and life-altering way. Some Black women are literally scared to get pregnant at this point. They are considering moving to states where there's abortions, that they can access them. They're concerned about being arrested for things related to pregnancy. So there are real impacts to these things, and I don't think people should be taking these things lightly. There's a real ripple effect of all these laws and policies, and so that's why we've got to get out and vote in every election.
Question from the panel, Nola. Question, Nola. Question.
You're very funny, Roland. Thank you so much for doing this poll, and that is a sizable end. That is very impressive. So my question is a little data-driven. So you mentioned that you polled in several cities. What were those cities, and were they heavily concentrated Black areas, or what did the demographics look like? As a social scientist, I'm very interested in your work.
We polled in California, Georgia, Texas, Louisiana, Pennsylvania, Michigan, all the states where there's a large majority of Black people. And, as I've said, we've been polling for the last 10 years. And consistently, this one comes up. We are in places like I said, Michigan, places like Georgia, places Louisiana. And so this is one of the other things that I wanted to lift up is, the conversation around young voters versus Black voters. For both, economics was a key issue. When we start looking at older voters, things like democracy are more important, but not that different. I mean, that's when, when we do these types of polls, we force them into ranking top tier issues. But overwhelmingly, everyone is feeling the squeeze. We're out here hustling. Gas prices are high. Food prices are high. Student loans. All of those things are going to be important issues in terms of how we need to be talking to voters.
Thank you,
Lauren.
And so you're not seeing anything in the poll that would indicate any sort of benefit for Donald Trump, right? Because of course the media wants that horse race. They want that result. But did you see anything that would benefit a candidate on the right?
I mean, we asked the question in terms of, who they would vote for. So 1 in 5 voters, Black voters, are on the fence. 55% say they would vote for Biden. 75% said they would vote for a Democrat. 9% for a Republican candidate. So that's about, but I also want to lift up that about 20% are not sure and 5% said others. And that's about the same, that what we see in the general population. That's what I think is really good about these polls is that they really do represent that Black people are not a monolith, right? So, we shouldn't expect that everyone's going to be, voting from one particular party, but we do see that it's about what we see generally, which was about 9%.
Greg?
Thank you, Roland, and thank you, Ms. Davis-Moss, for this work. I'm wondering what you think the role of, if any role, political education might play in pushing the needle. I mean, it was very interesting, as you say, with 1 in 4 18 to 29-year-olds saying they've thought about not voting in 2024, but at the same time, 72% of those young voters feel the Black community has power to change elections. So there seems to be almost like a dissonance. You have the power, but you're choosing to withhold it. And I'm wondering if this might be a message to be sent to engage in more political education, particularly around young people. And the other thing I thought was interesting, I wonder if there's an age variation involved, looking at the issues at the top there, cost of living, racism, healthcare, and education being kind of closely grouped together. But at the very bottom, the war between Israel and Hamas, and then LGBTQ plus rights. How should we be reading that? Are there variations in age that affect that? And thank you again for the work.
Yeah, so a couple of things there. I would say I love how you lifted up the fact that they said while it was 38% of young voters that are certain to vote, 70% that were not sure. I'm sorry, 17% that were not sure. Over 70% said they know the power of their vote and they think it can affect real change. So what that says to me is that they know that their vote is not wasted, but it also says that they have real concerns, right? So if politicians really want to earn the vote, they're going to have to be responsive to their needs. They're going to have to really engage with younger voters and, for all that matter, Black voters, directly. And, I like to think about things like, truth and reconciliation, right? So when you do that work, you have to acknowledge, you have to engage in truth, and you have to provide the redress. And that reconciliation comes when there's political will, there's trust building, there's a transparency, and then that follows with a substantial investment in the resources. And so that's what the conversation needs to be. But at the same time, we also need to be talking about the progress, right? The progress. We have had some wins, right? And if we want to have more wins, that comes from voting. And that comes from saying, if you care about Black history being taught in school, if you care about critical race theory, all of those things, those don't happen at these national elections. Like, those are things that are happening in states, and I don't think people appreciate that. So that's why we have to really educate people on the process to say, if those are things you care about, that's going to require you to think about library councils, city council, boards of education. Get really educated on those candidates, because that's going to make the difference. And that real progress we want to see happens when we continue to vote people in office that reflect our needs and our values.
Thank you.
Doc, where do people go to actually look at the poll results and learn more about it? So, yes, you can visit us at blackwomensrj.org. And then for those that just want to get more engaged in voting in our work, we have a campaign. It's called I'm a Reproductive Justice Voter. So you can follow us at blackwomen.vote or I'm an rjvoter.org. And that's what we're doing 24/7, is helping people understand how to connect these issues. One of the things the mother of the movement we're talking about is that when we're talking about reproductive justice, we're not talking about, pro-life, all these other things, because really the truth of the matter is all of the things that we need to be talking about happen before you get pregnant. Okay. So if you don't, can't afford to pay for the child, if you're not going to be able to finish your education or these other things, when you have to think about when you have an unintended pregnancy, if you don't have good answers to those questions, then you have to have that difficult conversation about whether or not I should think about an abortion. But if you have good answers to those questions, which is a result of great policy, then that unintended pregnancy can become a baby. So what we want to do is help people understand all the other issues, things like the built environment, clean air, clean water, the criminal and justice system. All of those things have an impact on our reproductive decision making. All right, then. Well, surely appreciate it. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
All right, thanks a bunch. All right, let me thank my panel. Lauren Victoria Burke, I appreciate it. Dr. Greg Carr, appreciate it as well. And Nola, somebody actually put in the message board, they said, is your name actually Nola, or do you just call yourself that because that's short for New Orleans, Louisiana? I told somebody I would ask the question. I think you're on mute.
She not on mute.
What? I mean, I was going to ask the question. I'm just saying. I just asked the question.
She not on mute.
All right. Well, we are waiting for the invite to the bougie gumbo. So please let us know when you fire that up, Nola.
Bet.
Bet. Okay. All right. Yeah. We'll see. All right. That is it. Hey, y'all, I am in Dallas. We did not get to the Crystal Mason story today. I am going to get with that tomorrow. These yahoos in Tarrant County, they literally are trying to appeal that decision. They have been terrorizing that black woman for 8 years. And so we are going to keep uplifting her, talking about that story as well. YouTube folks, y'all need to go ahead and hit that like button before I sign off. So Crystal Mason and her attorney will join us tomorrow. Hey, folks, I'm here in Dallas. My dad turned 77, so I took him out to lunch, flew in town, took him out to lunch with my mom as well. Now, it don't make any sense. You know, like, I got the cowboy hat on me. My mama got on. Like, I bought him a cowboy hat as a birthday gift. Why he ain't got it on? See, black people are so uncooperative. Just uncooperative. So he turned 77 today. Mom turned 77 in November. So we were hanging out, getting some seafood there. So always glad to be home, folks. That's it. I'll be actually broadcast tomorrow from Miami. I'll be speaking to the Black County executive there. I'm actually moderating a conversation with Fonnie Willis, Fulton County DA. So I'll be in me tomorrow. Still doing a show, but I'll be there tomorrow. So look forward to seeing y'all. Hey, folks, don't forget, got several different things. First of all, support us in what we do. Join the Bring the Funk fan club. Your dollars make it possible for us to do all these shows on the Black Star Network. You can see your check and money order to P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C. 20037-0196. Cash App, $RM Unfiltered. PayPal, R Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle, Roland at RolandSMartin.com. Roland at RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. Download the Black Star Network app. Apple phone, Android phone, Apple TV, Android TV, Roku, Amazon Fire TV, Xbox One, Samsung Smart TV. Don't forget to get a copy of my book, White Fear, How the Brownie of America is Making White Folks Lose Their Minds, available at bookstores nationwide. Get the audio version on Audible. Also, only got 500 copies left of folks of The Furs, President Barack Obama's road to the White House, as originally reported by Roland S. Martin. Fire sale going. I'm personally autographing all of these copies. $10 plus $5.99 shipping and handling. You can go to RolandSMartin.com/the first and put your order in. And I'm telling you, I'm not printing any more copies. Once they're gone, they're gone. They're gone. I'm not going to print any more copies. You're not going to be able to find it on Amazon, anywhere else. I own it. I own the rights. I'm the publisher. And so I know how many copies are left. And that's it. So if you want to get that personally autographed, go to RolandSMartin.com/the first. And don't forget to get our pocket squares, of course. We have the Shibori pocket squares, the custom-made pocket squares as well. Getting ready for summer, because you know you got to look all snazzy, especially with us rolling the Essence Fest with the linen suit on. And so you can, of course, get that. If you got a little swagger, go ahead and get the pocket squares, folks, by going to RolandSMartin.com/pocket squares. All the money, pocket squares, the books, everything comes right back into the show. And so when you get these, you're also investing in the Black Star Network. Folks, that's it. Yes, I'm rocking the Alpha gear because Saturday is my 35th Alpha-versary. Paul Macron, Texas A&M Epsilon line. So shout out to my LBs, Paul, Freddie, and John. Kevin, he died actually on our anniversary on April 27, 1999. And all the folks in Dallas County, yes, I have my button here. I voted in Dallas County. Local elections today, I did vote. So no matter where you're living, Find out if you have elections going on right now or when the local election is happening. I keep telling y'all, every race matters. City council races, school board races, county races. All of these races matter. And so you may be having elections happening. You don't even know anything about it. Go to your county website, go to your city website and see when the municipal and the county elections are taking place. All right? I'll see y'all tomorrow. Holla! Black Star Network is here.
Oh, no punch!
I'm real revolutionary right now.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, this difference between Black Star Network and Black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be Black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig?